Hello everyone and welcome to CloudSec 2020. I hope you're enjoying the event so far. Thank you for joining our session today, Detecting and Remediating Misconfigurations 101. So my name is Fiona Griffin and I'm a Solution Architect for Trend Micro based here in Sydney, Australia. And I'm joined by my colleague Alex German, who's a Client Solution Architect for Trend Micro. How are you, Alex?
I'm good, thanks, Fiona. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Okay, so let's get started. So before we begin our session today, let's just have a quick look at the agenda. So firstly, I'll begin by taking you through some insights to understand how and why misconfigurations happen. And then I'll hand it over to Alex, who's going to give us a demonstration today, spinning up resources and creating misconfigurations in AWS. And then remediating and identifying those misconfigured resources in real time through our Cloud One Conformity solution. And then she'll also show us how to improve your overall cloud posture security management by setting up the correct guardrails. Okay, so let's just take a look here at the AWS shared responsibility model. And for customers on public cloud service providers, such as AWS, security and compliance, are not solely the responsibility of the cloud security provider. Customers really do also play, an important role in cloud security. And in fact, both the customer and the cloud security provider are responsible for cloud security. And this is really known as the shared responsibility model. So cloud security really, is a shared responsibility. So AWS will be responsible for security of the cloud, and the customer is responsible for security in the cloud. So, AWS will be responsible for protecting the AWS infrastructure for all services that run on the AWS cloud. And the security control on the customer side then will be determined by the AWS service that they use. For example, they will be responsible for configuration of the operating system, identity access, and customer data. And then let's just take a look here at the Azure shared responsibility model. So Azure has also published recently a similar shared responsibility model, Microsoft stating for that all cloud deployment types, you own your data and identities. So you are responsible for protecting the security of your data and identities on on-premise resources and the cloud components you control, which varies by service types. So what does this, mean for you? Well, a security risk lies in, how you configure your cloud services, and misconfiguration of these resources can lead to a serious vulnerability to your applications and data. So what is misconfiguration? And a misconfiguration in the cloud is the improper setup of cloud services that may jeopardize security, reliability, or performance. So they are typically the result of human error. And then, we all are aware that hackers can then exploit the vulnerability of a misconfigured infrastructure to initiate the attack and gain access into your environment. So some of the most significant and well-published data breaches over the last few years have been a result of misconfigured infrastructure in the public cloud. What may have been an innocent human error in configuring a mission-critical workload has the ability to be exploited by a malicious actor. So we all, as we've seen there has been some, recently in the last 2 years, some public data breaches that we are aware because of misconfigurations. So just if we go a little bit deeper around this, the majority of issues and data breaches in the cloud are mistake driven, and people are using a lot more services in the cloud, a lot more moving parts. So we have identified the top 5 cloud misconfigurations. Storage access. So when it comes to storage access, leaving, things like an S3 bucket open to the public is quite common. We also see a lot of hackers beginning to explore cloud infrastructure, scanning for an S3 bucket or scanning public GitHub repository for secrets and credentials. So it's also critical to ensure that your password, API keys, admin credentials are both kept secure and encrypted. And it's also important to make sure that logging and monitoring are not turned off and that you have the correct security group set up. And finally, you need to have a system in place to identify these misconfigurations as they occur. So finally for today, just want to highlight, why do misconfigurations happen? And public cloud is still, relatively new, and finding resources who can keep up with the ever-changing cloud services can be difficult. Traditional on-premise security controls are not often translated to the cloud infrastructure model, and sometimes it's hard to gain that visibility across all accounts, all regions, especially if you have a large environment with multiple security tools running for risk and compliance in different places. And how do you gain that visibility into everything that you migrate to the cloud, or gain that visibility into the current state of your environment posture? So, as you're all aware, as you're probably all aware, we know there is an exploding set of cloud infrastructures available out there, and cloud providers are constantly growing their services, which can make life quite difficult. So thank you very much. I'll now hand over to Alex, who's going to give us a demonstration today on, identifying and remediating some of those misconfigurations.
Yeah, thanks, V. Yeah, you're right. It can be really simple or, really easy to happen that misconfigurations pop up in your environment, especially as your infrastructure grows and the team size grows and, as those teams start to separate from a centralized place. So it's really important to have, a monitoring control in place that can help you, maintain visibility across what's happening in your public cloud infrastructure. And so I'm going to show you, how the Cloud Conformity product, which is part of Trend Micro's Cloud One platform, helps enable this and really goes hand in hand with, running in the cloud. So if I share with you a screen, I'm going to just perform a quick demonstration on really how easy it can be for this infrastructure to be spun up in your environment, but then also how simple it can be with a platform like Conformity to identify it and remediate it, and like Fiona said, implement some guardrails to prevent it in future. So if I share with you, I'm here in the AWS Management Console, and I'm going to perform a really simple demonstration with the example of an S3 bucket. So if I go ahead and create a test S3 bucket for today's demo, CloudSec demo Alex, and I'm going to inadvertently for today's demo allow public access on this S3 bucket. Now, AWS does warn me about allowing public access on an S3 bucket. However, it's not always common that you're spinning up the infrastructure just from a management console. It may be initiated as part of a CloudFormation template, Terraform template. It may be within a CLI. It may just happen as part of a code deployment. So although AWS is warning me here, when you're within a matured kind of DevOps environment, this can be quite simple to happen, or a simple mistake to happen. And it may also be, and we often see this with customers that we work with, that things get spun up like this for in a sandbox environment, or for the purpose of a test, or a demonstration, or just running some tests. So however, it does have the ability then to make its way into production environments, and we do see this happen really often. So what I'm going to do now is change the ACLs on this bucket to misconfigure in a way that allows public read access. So if I go ahead and save that, I'm going to now flick over to Cloud Conformity and see what that looks like when Cloud Conformity picks up this misconfiguration. So I've already onboarded. I'll just let that save, taking a little bit of time. Let my computer catch up. Great. So that bucket has been updated. You can see here public access on the bucket. So now what I'm going to take a look at is the conformity dashboard. So for those of you who are not familiar with Cloud Conformity, this is the central dashboard where if I have a look at my all accounts view, I get a visibility across all of my public cloud infrastructure. I'm getting an assessment on how well it's configured and identifying risks or misconfigurations within my environment. But if I take a look at my the specific account that I've just been working in, and I take a look at the checks that are being performed in my environment, I can see there a rule that's been broken, that public read access on an S3 bucket. So if I take a look at this particular check, conformity, and this is happening in real time as well, which I think is really important. It's really important to minimize the potential for attack. I can go ahead and see I've got a couple of publicly readable resources, including this one that I just created. So conformity's categorized that risk as a very high risk, giving me all the information I need to know, letting me know when I introduced that and who introduced that resource, and then giving me a hot link to go in and fix that. But not just identifying the risk, conformity is also helping me resolve the risk. So if I take a look at this resolve button, it's going to take me to a knowledge base article that relates to this rule, and we have the same for every single rule and check within conformity. That gives me a really good understanding of what this risk is, why I should care about it, and then really simple to follow steps on how to firstly audit that misconfiguration within my AWS environment, either through the console or through the command line interface. And then also, most importantly, how to resolve or remediate it. So even for the most junior resource or someone that's never even seen AWS before, it can be really, really simple to go in and resolve any of the risks that conformity is identified. So if I go in and resolve that risk I could do that through the command line interface. The steps are there really simple, or I can use these console steps and go in and fix that, which I'm going to do now. We'll be able to see in real time conformity showing me that risk has been resolved. So if I go in here, remove that public read access, save the changes, when I head back into conformity, what I should expect to see now is that that issue being resolved. So now I think that was a really manual and the most kind of manual way of remediating a misconfiguration within your environment. But there are really so many more efficient ways, more streamlined ways, and then ways to implement guardrails, which I want to touch on now. So the first, I guess, or the most left way of implementing a guardrail for implementing kind of best practice checks or best practice standards within your infrastructure in AWS or Azure is to scan your infrastructure as code templates and try and identify any ways that the template may potentially introduce misconfigurations. And we do that with what's called a template scanner. So a template scanner performs a check over a CloudFormation template and identifies any potential misconfigurations. And then it gives you an opportunity to remediate those before that template is even deployed. There are also ways like auto remediation. So you can implement a corrective control in place where conformity can identify any misconfigurations within your account and then automatically resolve those for you, which I will demonstrate today. And then there are other ways where you can implement a validation step throughout your CI/CD pipeline to let Conformity run a check across your deployments and let the person know who's making that deployment if any misconfigurations have been introduced. And then, of course, you can always come into the console, run a report or have any schedule reports. And then I guess one of the most useful ways our customers find is these communication channels, where instead of coming into the dashboard, they can see a real-time feed of misconfigurations or risks within their environment through to some of the channels that they're already used to using. So things like email and SMS, communication tools like Slack or Microsoft Teams, and then ticketing systems like ServiceNow and Jira. So it's a really great way to interact with Conformity without having to come into a dashboard and to also get the most out of that real-time capability. So now if I have a look at what we were looking at before, we were just checking to make sure that we've now resolved that S3 bucket read access issue, which we have. So you'll see I've only got two now, two failed buckets. The one that we're working with today, 3 minutes ago, I've updated it and it's now showing a success. So Conformity's validated that the fix that I've applied to close off that public access has been implemented correctly. So now auto remediation, which I talked to before, is I guess one of those guardrails that you can put in place within your AWS environment to ensure that any misconfigurations that are just non-negotiables for you shouldn't come up in your environment, are against your standards and policies around security in your cloud environments, to make sure you've got that backstop so that they never never make their way into your environment. And things like public read-write access on S3 buckets is definitely one of those candidates. Things like unrestricted access on your ports on your EC2s is another one. And the way that it works is Conformity interacts with this SNS Lambda framework that you would set up and manage within your own AWS environment. And it's triggered by Conformity identifying a misconfiguration. It doesn't have to be every single one. You can pick and choose which triggers you'd like and implement any exemptions if you need to. So in my in my AWS account, I've already set up this auto remediation framework. I've got an SNS topic which is set up in my communication channels. It's speaking to the Lambda functions, and I haven't got any turned on right now, but I'm going to turn on the function for the S3 bucket with read and write access. So I can watch it now automatically remediate that issue that I previously manually remediated. And it's going to do this, within a matter of seconds. We hope so anyway. We'll see how the demo goes. Mm-hmm. It's always risky doing a live demo, but I'm going to give it a go anyway today. We'll see what happens. So at the moment, the orchestrator that's controlling all the individual Lambda functions is I've turned all the communications off from the orchestrator. But what I want to do now, once this loads for me, is to enable the orchestrator that aligns to, and if I can show you, no, my Mac's running slowly. I'm going to turn it on for a specific rule, which is that, and the code when we saw it in the Conformity dashboard was S3001. So there's an identifier next to each rule. That rule is S3 bucket with a read access for anyone. Still working, we're getting there slowly. All right, here. So we've got the config file within this Lambda function. It's got each of the corresponding lambdas, individual lambdas that control the auto remediation function. I've identified auto remediate S3001, which is the function. Now, if I show you back here, function for S3001, ensure S3 buckets do not allow public read access. I'm going to go ahead and turn that to true. As you can see, everything else is off, but I just want to turn this one on. I'm going to update it.
So it's quite easy for no user to go in there and change it.
That's right. You can turn them on and off as you wish. You can, and this is something to definitely test first in your lower environment, see how it works. But this is definitely something that we kind of is a backstop, is that kind of the final last resort for anything that may have slipped through the cracks. And I think we strongly encourage the use of those infrastructure as code template scanning, implementing validation steps through the CI/CD pipeline, and a really rich API makes that super easy for customers to do that within the existing tool set they have.
Yeah, okay, that's great.
So now that's on, it's being deployed. I'm going to try repeat my S3 bucket with the public read access, and hopefully Conformity's got my back and will pick up that issue and resolve it for me. Create a new bucket. CloudSec remediate. Getting there, catching up. Slowly, my laptop is not playing ball today. Oh, nearly there. Bucket. All right, finally. Allowing public access. Amazon says, are you sure? Yes, for the purpose of today's demo, I'm sure. CloudSec remediate bucket. Let's make it public. Permissions. Amazon's going to ask, am I really sure? Yes, I'm sure. Right, so we've now got a bucket, public access. We go into Conformity and we try and locate that resource. Slowly. Eventually, I think my Mac is just having a little bit of trouble keeping up with everything that's going on.
Yeah.
So bear with me, everyone.
So now we'll go into Conformity and we'll see that failure.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We're just going to validate that Conformity was able to pick up that bucket. So if I have a look in the monitoring dashboard, this is going to give me an even more real-time view of exactly what's happened.
That's great.
What you can see here is 2 minutes ago, I created that CloudSec remediate bucket. It was spun up. There was 4 checks that were performed on that bucket, and they were all succeeded. And then a minute ago, I went in and updated that bucket's ACL. You can see my name there next to the bucket, and it's introduced 2 failures. So let's take a look at what those failures were. As expected, public read access on my bucket, which failure. But within less than 60 seconds, my auto remediation function, which you can see here, it's identified that auto remediation function, it went in and corrected my issue. It updated my ACL, and now I've got a success on my public read access, which is that S3001 that I've turned on for auto remediate. So as you can see, without any intervention, within kind of near real time, I've got a backstop in place or a guardrail to ensure that that particular misconfiguration is not going to come up in my environment. So hopefully from this demo today, you've kind of seen just a very simple example of a very simple misconfiguration. Conformity's rule set covers 700 plus rules at this point. So there's kind of a lot of scope for the type of misconfigurations. You've seen an example here with a pretty risky misconfiguration, but something that comes up more often than you'd expect when we talk to customers. And you can see kind of an example, and I've mentioned some of the other ones, but an example of how you can implement some guardrails within your environment to ensure that these don't come up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex. I think you've really highlighted how easy it is to create those misconfigurations in AWS, through human error, and then how you can, by having that central visibility, you can really close down that security gap and identify those misconfigurations. Yeah, so thanks very much for everyone for joining our session today. I hope you enjoyed it and enjoyed the rest of the event. Thank you.